Epstein, The Architects of Power, and The Theater of Illusion in The Great Theater of Global Power. There are few names that evoke such widespread suspicion and intrigue as Jeffrey Epstein. His death in a maximum security cell, convenient, untimely, and wrapped in layers of official negligence, marked not the end of a scandal, but the curtain rising on a mystery that mirrors the assassination of John F. Kennedy in its symbolic weight and unanswered questions. As with JFK, the truth has been buried under a mountain of redactions, deflections, and carefully crafted narratives. What the public knows is a shadow of the full player performance within a performance. Journalist Michael Wolff, in an era of tabloid sensationalism, chose restraint. He refused to pry into Epstein's private world in the way most of his colleagues eagerly attempted. Some call this silence complicity. Others, a rare display of old-school discretion. Either way, Wolff's silence points to a broader reality. There are realms of power into which even seasoned writers hesitate to tread. The Epstein case is often framed solely as a sex scandal, yet this is a narrow, misleading lens. The infamous flight logs, the Black Book, the island, these are surface symbols. The reality is far more insidious. Just because someone's name appears on a passenger list does not mean they were involved in pedophilia. That's not how real power operates. Power uses implication, guilt by association, suggestion. It creates leverage, not always based on crimes committed, but on secrets feared to be exposed. Epstein's true role, the banker of the shadows to understand. Epstein is to understand the architecture of modern covert power. He was not just a predator, he was a mechanism, a bridge between elite financiers, intelligence services, and global decision-makers. His connections were not accidental. His access was curated. A man of his background, no college degree, no real financial expertise, does not ascend to managing billions for the world's wealthiest families without powerful hands pulling him upward. Robert Maxwell, the disgraced media tycoon and father of Ghislaine Maxwell, is widely suspected of having deep ties with Mossad. His mysterious death at sea only amplifies these suspicions. It is likely that he, with the patronage of families like the Rothschilds, helped shape Epstein into an elite fixer, a spider at the center of a global web of blackmail, finance, and manipulation. Epstein's Caribbean island and Manhattan mansion were not dens of hedonism, but carefully controlled environments for information gathering. Hidden cameras, silent observers, anonymous donors. This was a stage for intelligence, entrapment, not indulgence. Girls were a component, yes, but not the main mission. They were tools for leverage. The real value Epstein brought to the table was his ability to move money quietly, swiftly, and in service of clandestine goals. He functioned like a private banker for the invisible empire. Money laundering, offshore accounts, untraceable donations to intelligence operations, arms deals, regime change logistics, crypto experiments. His Rolodex of activities likely includes operations far more significant than the tabloids dare speculate. The intelligence, Hydra, Mossad, CIA, MI6, DGSEAT, the summit of global intelligence. Rivalries are a fiction. The Mossad, CIA, MI6, and DGSE often work in unison, not because they share ethics, but because they share patrons. Intelligence is not always national. It is, more accurately, transnational. These agencies protect interests often economic, financial, and dynastic rather than flags. And Epstein was useful to all of them. His social network included not just billionaires, scientists, and celebrities, but also royalty, prime ministers, and ex-presidents. These people did not flock to him because of his charm. They came because he was necessary, a man who could provide introductions, silence problems, and open hidden vaults. A death that solved too many problems. Epstein's death in 2019 solved more problems than it created for a lot of powerful people. The surveillance cameras malfunctioned, the guards fell asleep, the cellmate was removed, and the autopsy results were ambiguous at best. This wasn't incompetence, it was choreography. His death wasn't the end, it was the removal of a liability. As in a novel by Agatha Christie, everyone had a motive. Was it the Mossad silencing a rogue asset? Was it the CIA eliminating a man who knew too much? Was it British intelligence protecting a prince? Or was it simply Epstein himself, knowing the walls were closing in, aided by friends who made it easy? Whatever the answer, one truth remains. What you see is never what it is. Trump. The pawn in a larger game. Donald Trump's entanglement with Epstein is often cited by his critics, but in the grand scheme, Trump is irrelevant. He is not a king, nor a mastermind. He is an opportunist, a performer selected by the real architects of power for a particular act on the world stage. Presidents, prime ministers, chancellors all are pawns. Some are loud and brash, like Trump. Others are polished and technocratic, but none operate independently of the families and foundations that fund, manage, and direct them. Trump, like Clinton, like Obama, like Blair, serves a role. He is allowed wealth, fame, and power as long as he plays his part. Once he becomes inconvenient or obsolete, he will be cast aside. In the pyramid of power, he is no more than a flamboyant butler trusted to keep the dining room in order, never allowed into the vault. In the great theater of global power, few names evoke such calculated suspicion as Jeffrey Epstein. His mysterious rise, grotesque fall, and the convenient silence surrounding his death are not aberrations, they are blueprints. Epstein was not unique, he was one of many such men. Financiers, power brokers, shadow fixers. Their names change, but their roles are strikingly similar that as we peel back the layers, a pattern emerges. Jeffrey Epstein, Robert Maxwell, Bernard Madoff, Michael Milken, Edmund Saroff, and Ivan Boskiol of Jewish origin, all deeply embedded in global finance, and all surrounded by whispers and in some cases, strong evidence of cooperation with Mossad and other intelligence agencies. These men are not isolated figures. They are instruments of a transnational structure. Each played their part in laundering money, capturing elites, manipulating markets, and funding covert operations. Some fell from grace when their usefulness expired. Others died mysteriously, but all served, knowingly or not, the same invisible empire. 1. Robert Maxwell, the prototype spy financier. Robert Maxwell, born Jan Ludwig Hyman Benjamin Ho, is perhaps the most openly confirmed intelligence asset among them. A Czech-born British media baron, Maxwell built a global publishing empire while simultaneously serving as an asset for Mossad, with alleged connections to MI6 and the KGB as well. Declassified documents and numerous investigations, including Seymour Hersh's work, suggest that Maxwell was involved in selling promise software to governments with a built-in backdoor for Israeli intelligence. His death in 1991 falling from his yacht named Lady Ghislaine was officially ruled an accident, but multiple intelligence sources believe it was an assassination or a retirement by Mossad after he became a liability. His daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, seamlessly transitioned into Jeffrey Epstein's circle, suggesting continuity between Robert Maxwell's intelligence dealings and Epstein's later blackmail and trafficking operations. Point to Jeffrey Epstein, the continuation of the Maxwell Operation Epstein, with no clear source of initial wealth, emerged in the 1990s as a mysterious financier connected to powerful elites, from presidents to royals to Nobel laureates. Like Maxwell, he operated in luxury, in secrecy, and with state-like protection. His residences were rigged with surveillance equipment, reportedly used to capture compromising footage of guest footage that could be used to blackmail, control, or recruit. He offered influenced introductions and illicit pleasures to the powerful, but behind the scenes, many now suspect he was moving money, intelligence, and influence on behalf of Mossad, and possibly the CIA. Epstein, like Maxwell, is said to have had deep ties to Israeli intelligence, likely functioning as a long-term honeypot operation designed to compromise global leaders and direct world affairs quietly from the shadows. 4. Michael Milken, the junk bond sorcerer. Michael Milken revolutionized finance in the 1980s by creating and manipulating the junk bond market. He became known as the junk bond king, building a $5 billion personal fortune while bankrolling corporate takeovers and restructuring America's corporate landscape, but his deals often involved insider trading, illicit collusion, and unregulated financial instruments that reshaped Wall Street into a casino for elites. He was convicted in 1990 and served just under 2 years in prison. Despite being one of the most disruptive financial criminals of the era, Milken's operations, like Epstein's, often involved network capital, access to key people, quiet flows of money, and silent political leverage. And while never proven, rumors have long circulated that his rise and immunity were aided by relationships with Israeli financial and intelligence interests, who benefited from his restructuring of capital flows in the 1980s and beyond. By Edmund Safra, the banker of shadows. Edmund Safra, a Lebanese-born Jewish banker, built Republic National Bank of New York into one of the world's most secretive financial institutions. His specialty, discreet banking for governments, intelligence agencies, arms dealers, and oligarchs. Safra was close to both the Vatican and Israeli institutions. His bank was reportedly used for laundering money for intelligence agencies, including the CIA and Mossad. His death in 1999, suffocated in a fire in his Monaco penthouse, was officially ruled a murder by a nurse. But the surrounding circumstances reek of a silencing operation like Epstein. Safra played with powers that operate in the shadows. His death, like Maxwell's and Epstein's, closed a door that led directly into the heart of the global financial intelligence complex. 6. Ivan Boesky, the insider of insider trading. Ivan Boesky was a Wall Street arbitrager who became the face of insider trading scandals in the 1980s. His massive profits and access to sensitive corporate information suggest he operated with intelligence-like precision. Boesky, too, had deep ties to Israel and American Jewish elites. While publicly disgraced, he escaped the full wrath of the law by cooperating with authorities, feeding information on other traders, perhaps acting, at least partly, as a controlled informant for deeper interests. Like the others, Boesky's fall seemed more like a strategic retreat than a total collapse, a pattern of function, not coincidence. What links all these men? They were not just Jewish but connected to elite Jewish networks with strong ties to Israel and Zionist causes. They operated in high finance, where money and influence intersect. They were either linked directly to intelligence services or suspected of acting as informal assets. They moved capital, controlled information, and had access to the global elite. Most were discarded or neutralized once they became liabilities. This is not about ethnicity or faith, it is about a network that operates above the nation-state, using identity, ideology, and finance as tools. These men were servants, not king's tools of a global structure in which intelligence, finance, and blackmail are the currency of true power. The final curtain. When we speak of Epstein, we are not speaking of a man, we are speaking of a system, one built on secrets, sustained by silence, and protected by institutions that the public naively trusts: banks, media, courts, and even governments. The question is not who killed Epstein, but who created him and why. The answer, like in a well-written tragedy, is hidden in plain sight. The same families, networks, and intelligence alliances that have ruled through shadow and spectacle for centuries. And the show goes on. Conclusion. The curtain never falls. The Epstein affair is not over. It never will be. It is not a story of one man, but of a system, an ecosystem of influence, blackmail, shadow financing, and statecraft. The media serves as the orchestra, playing distraction. Politicians perform their lines, and the public, like a captive audience, is offered scapegoats instead of truth. We will never get the list. We will never know the full story, because this was never meant to be a story with an ending. This is the way the world works, not with transparency, but with theater.